A local resort lands a multi-million-dollar deal. Questions about Barbados' economic recovery plan answered. And efforts underway to speed up the delivery of justice.
Credible, balanced, committed. This is the CBC Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. The Crane Resort has announced a multi-million-dollar deal with Hilton Grand Vacations Club that's expected to pump a significant amount of money into the economy. Owner Paul Doyle says the American brand has bought the timeshare part of the hotel, which now guarantees year-round occupancy, particularly from the U.S. East Coast. Now, he told a media conference at government headquarters with Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley that the sale is valued at $54 million US. The new properties will be called Hilton Grand Vacations at the Crane. Mr. Doyle explains that Crane will operate the timeshares but will adhere to the Hilton brand standards, noting several managers have already begun training in those protocols.
Timeshare can bring not just a stability to our business, but a stability to as a sector in tourism that the country can count on in terms of the economy, because it's consistent year after year, week after week, full, and we know where the revenues are. And then these folks will come in. I can see it opening up even more air routes from the United States. They typically will come on a Saturday, so it means there's a massive amount of people coming in on Saturdays from all over the U.S. So when you bring that many people on one day, it does offer opportunities to open up maybe routes that we didn't have before.
Prime Minister Motley agrees with Mr. Doyle about the potential benefits for Barbados' tourism product. She says the agreement brings with it tremendous opportunity to boost Barbados in the U.S., which has not been as strong as other source markets.
The U.S. market is very much more driven by brand name chains, and Marriott, Hilton, those are the kinds of brand name chains that there will be. In the case of the majority of Barbados' tourism product, we have some of the finest tourism product out, but they're not necessarily brand name chains. And therefore, while that has worked for the British and to a lesser extent the Canadians, for the U.S. market, I don't need to tell you, all of us have visited or know what the U.S. is like. And these chains, therefore, are the things that they immediately look for in a destination to make that determination as to whether they're traveling or not.
The Barbados Economic Recovery Team has responded to noted Professor Michael Howard, who over the weekend posed a series of questions about the government's rescue plan for the island. Professor Howard's queries sought more details about the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, known as the BERT program. Well, tonight we're bringing you some of the answers, and joining us to make that possible is member of the Barbados Economic Recovery Team, Dr. Kevin Greenidge. Dr. Greenidge, welcome and thanks for coming on the news.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, Shane, and thanks for having me.
Okay, Dr. Greenidge, there are many questions, and it'd probably take the entire newscast to get through all. So let's try and see if we can zone in on some of the more pertinent ones that people have been asking. We've seen them on social media, hearing them out on the street. This is one of the spicy ones. Was an increase in public sector salaries and pensions, as well as removal of UE fees, an appropriate economic policy? That's given that the stated goal of annual IMF briefings, as well as the present program, is to reduce current expenditure.
Shane, the overall answer to that is absolutely an appropriate, necessary policies.
Okay.
Why? When you design policy, you don't only have to take in consideration the current state of play, but you have to review how we arrive at this. For the last decade, public sector workers have not had an increase in salaries. True. And at the same time, the cost of living has been rising because of inflation and other measures. It means that, as the Prime Minister pointed out, if you're going to ask persons to run a marathon, i.e. have an adjustment program that will be have some impact at first, you need to feed them, give them breakfast, is what she would say, right? And therefore, it would make it sense to accommodate and build in some buffer, make that your baseline, which is what the team did, and then on that baseline, you project forward. And this is for the pensions increase, for wage increases, and we had absolutely no pushback from the IMF. because they understand that a society and people can't go.
Absolutely no pushback at all?
No, absolutely no pushback. Okay. Even on UE fees, you have cases where we know it becomes difficult for students, especially at the lower income level, to even go to university. And therefore, that in itself, it also have a growth effect, because as a person are able to go back to university and continue the degree, part of the program builds a recovery. So in bottom line, it makes absolute sense. You build that into your baseline, and from there you project, and this is what we did. And this is the overall framework of the BERTS program.
The Prime Minister has answered this question a lot of times. We've been seeing reporting it. But this is another question that I think people are still asking because of how things have gone in the past. They believe that there is a number. How many workers in the public service and the state-owned entities are estimated to be sent home? Okay, even if you don't have a set number, estimated.
Shane, to focus on a number is really to miss the big picture. The public sector and indeed central government SOEs have become what we would term unfit. They have become bloated, inefficiencies has crept in, high costs around operating. The overall tenet and arch of the BERTS program is to make the public sector and the central government fit for purpose, fiscally fit. In taking us where we need to go, we have to get efficiencies by trimming the size of it. Of course, that rationalization and efficiency improvements through what we call a project, retooling and empowering, retraining and enfranchising people will mean that in some instances, some of the things we do, we won't do the same way. There will be, of course, some losses. At the same time, there are other places like we have digitalization project, a modernization project going on stream, will be employment gains. In net effect, of course, will be a reduction in employment, in persons employed. Some persons will go home, but there'll also be options for them, including voluntary separation, rehiring in different areas, and empowering through ownership. So to put a number on it, Shane, is to miss the big picture. If I had to put a number, there's no way in the thousands that are being bumped around.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, because people have been banning about 4,000, 5,000, the Prime Minister has said it's not going to get there. But can we, but then what people say is that, okay, if you say it is not 4,000, then could it be 3,999? So people are afraid. Anytime you hear job loss, people are afraid. So is it? Can we ask then if it will be more than 1,000?
I saw when we presented the BERTS program about a week ago, we saw it headlines of 1,000 being sent home. If, in my view, it's difficult to find a number. If we reach that, that will be, in my term, the upper end. Okay. But the focus, again, is that even within this context, there are also measures to deal with any job loss. For example, there'll be a household mitigation unit set up directly on the Prime Minister to ensure that the effects on those who are any displaced workers are minimized to the maximum extent. But I want to reiterate, focusing on a number misses the big picture. It's not about austerity. It's about restructuring and training and improving the public sector to take us where we want to go.
Okay, I understand that angle. Okay, so the IMF loan of US $290 million is too small for an extended fund program given our very low levels of reserves and our extremely high level of debt. That's another one of the questions asked.
This is a yes or no answer. It is quite low, yes, but in terms of IMF loans, it is considered high access. Why? Because we have gotten committed at staff level agreement to 220%. Each country has a quota. So if you get more than 100%, 200%, that's a high access. Of course, in dollar value, because we're a small country and our quota is small, it's not a lot. We would have loved more. Prime Minister said so before. Because the vulnerabilities that we are facing, both in terms of natural disasters, and also because we want to move ahead on capital account liberalization gradually. So ideally, we would want more. So yes, we want more, but it's high access. And most important, I think the focus is not so much on how much we get, but one of the most important benefits of signing on to the IMF program is the catalytic role it plays. So because the IMF have endorsed the BERTS program, Barbados Recovery Program, Transformation Program, other development partners, IDB and CDB and others have pledged close to $1 billion. Immediately, we should come in and help boost it.
That knock-on effect. So can I ask this? the Prime Minister, she herself said yes, she would have wanted more. Because she did not get as much as she wanted, what would she have wanted to have done that the team cannot do because she didn't get that number?
I don't think it's so much that we can't do, because the BERT program, we have designed a path for which we want to accomplish things. Of course, first of all, the IMF resources don't go to natural spending. It goes to the central bank and show up the reserves as a measure of confidence. It just means that instead of having now $300 million in the reserve, you have a bit less. So it's not that that goes to finance the expense of government. Government financing comes from other sources, not from that money. That is to build confidence, to protect the exchange rate by showing the reserves. So having a buffer will allow us maybe accelerate the pace of liberalization. But again, that's more of a medium-term position. We first have to recover from where we are and then transform to where we want to go.
And the final question that we're going to use tonight, Dr. Greenidge. Over the years, the word IMF, the IMF with Barbadians synonymous to fear. They're afraid of it, even if they don't understand anything about it. They hear, don't go to the IMF. So Barbadians always feel like if you'll be paying back forever, your children, your grandchildren. So what are the conditionalities?
We have to understand that the IMF is a partnership in the recovery program. Barbados designed the BERT program, and Barbadians own it. We own this program. With or without the IMF, we would have done this anyway. The IMF is just cheap money. The conditionalities that persons speak about is indeed the exact targets we are setting for ourselves on the program. For example, we are saying we will get by 1920 end fiscal year, we will hit 6% primary balance. That now the IMF takes and say, okay, that's your target, and we will help you to monitor and reach that. Right? We say we're not going to run any more arrears. We're going to remain current on payments. And so the IMF takes that as conditionality, no arrears. You see what I'm saying? We say we will restructure and improve the efficiency of the public sector. And when we do that, we come up with a number, how much we want to gain through that in the first year. And that came out of the comprehensive survey that we did. And for the second year, the IMF takes that and gives us a ceiling. So the idea that the IMF comes in and says, these are conditions that you must meet, is not the truth. It's not how it works.
Okay.
You got me? So you take it's like someone holding your feet to the fire and say, you say you will do this? Okay, then do it. And that's why persons then accept the endorsement of the IMF, because they know the IMF will hold your feet to the fire, to the targets you set for yourself.
Wonderful.
Nothing to be feared from the IMF.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Dr. Kevin Greenidge, a member of the Barbados Economic Recovery Team. Thank you for joining us. And you're always welcome on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the first term officially got started this morning with thousands of students reporting for classes across the island. Over at Combermere, students got a special welcome from the newly implemented Board of Management. Chairman Alex MacDonald, along with Deputy Chair Dr. Alison Leacock and other board members, installed a special welcome banner outside of the school. Addressing the student body, Mr. MacDonald told them to make wise use of their time and maintain the legacy of the great 323-year-old institution.
The standard that we ask of you is not higher than the rest of the island, but the highest in the world. There are certain behaviors that people should say, that person could not have done that. They're a Combermerean. And I hope that you will understand the legacy that you're carrying now. Prime ministers, national heroes, businessmen, colossuses of the world have been Combermereans.
I agree. Mr. MacDonald reminded the new students to take pride in the school song.
Lives are in the making here. Hearts are in the waking here. Mighty undertaking here. What? Up and on. Up and on. Now let me tell you why those are important. Those are the first words of your school song, which will forever be burnt into your brain, even onto your deathbed.
And the new uniform was a noticeable difference over at the Ellerslie School. Principal Lieutenant Colonel Errol Brathwaite says despite the initial concerns raised, all students were properly attired.
So I'm happy to say this morning that the students have turned out looking really nice and fresh in their new uniforms, and they appear to be quite happy, and so too am I. The teachers are happy, the parents are happy, So we get on with the business of educating the children of Barbados.
Some parents who spoke to CBC are supportive of the new school uniform.
It's cheaper for me because I would have had to look for 5 blouses for her. 5 uniforms would be more money and less pressing.
I was wondering why to change the uniform at first, but they look nice on the children.
The uniform was excellent because we took her straight to the person at the school asked to get to make the uniforms, and the uniform was like $75. So it was excellent. It saved me some money because I didn't have to buy overalls, I didn't have to buy blouses. Just one straight uniform, so I like it.
We all know the start of the school year is always emotional for students and parents. We visited secondary schools where some first form students shared their experiences.
Excited and a little bit afraid.
Why?
Because I don't know anybody, but I'm also excited to know and to learn about new things and everything.
I'm feeling very nice. I'm good. I really wanted to come to school here because my brother goes to school here. And I feel great about it.
I'm kind of excited and nervous at the same time.
Why?
Because it's a new school and none of my friends are with me.
Parents also gave the young ones some advice.
Just, do our best and stay focused. That's all, pretty much. Right? Everything else is up to her.
Just choose her friends wisely and continue to work hard.
Yeah. Choose your friends wisely, follow the rules, keep a positive attitude, and first and foremost, keep God first.
It's been a smooth first day of school for students using the country's public transportation system. Word of this from Marketing and Communications Manager at the Barbados Transport Board, Linda Holder. She says most students were transported from the country's major terminals by 8:30 this morning.
In the event that there were any others who were still there after 8:30, we had one just Dighton Griffith. So outside of all the other schools would have gone through and would have been able to get their buses. As we had indicated, we put some systems in place, and those systems worked for us this morning, and we are sure they will work for us again as we continue to move to schools, children around the island.
Ms. Holder went on to reveal that the Transport Board has eclipsed its promised target of 110 buses on the road today. Transport Board Chairman Gregory Nichols also commented on bus availability today. A post on his Facebook page read, "Congratulations to the team at the Transport Board for getting us to the 110 buses this morning. Many thanks to our partners at UCAL and Simpson Motors. When we started in June, we were lingering in the 60s. To achieve this is fantastic." He later spoke to the CBC.
As we know, most of these buses have been in operation and in existence for more than 12 years or so, some of them in excess of 20 years, and they work for 22 hours or so. But we are very happy. There are a number of routes that we haven't been able to fully service, some in the south, and the Draxall area and some areas in St. John. We haven't been able to get enough cover, and then there's also areas like Sturgis and Hillaby in St. Thomas, and then Cornwalltown in the north of the island. 1 or 2 areas that we are concerned about, but we are trying to deploy our scheduled service so tomorrow we can more effectively cover the entire island.
Barbados will soon have 3 new temporary High Court judges. Confirmation of this from Attorney General Dale Marshall as the country begins a new legal year. Sharika Griffith reports.
Attorney General Dale Marshall says he had anticipated the appointments of temporary High Court judges would have been made by September 1st. However, due to pre-existing engagements, the new judges will assume duties a little later than originally expected.
The challenge is that some of the individuals with whom we've had discussions, whether they've expressed their willingness, they're actually committed in other jurisdictions to performing judicial duties. And I mean, the point about judicial responsibility is they don't just drop it. So those individuals will not be available to service our court needs until, in one instance, January, and in another instance, a little later in the year.
The Attorney General was speaking after a church service at the Church of Christ the King in Rotondo, marking the opening of the new legal year. He says even with the upcoming appointments, which will complement the 2 current High Court judges, there are still more than 1,000 serious criminal matters to be heard.
Regrettably, we're going to have to make a decision about prosecuting some of them. Some of these criminal matters date back to 2004. I suspect that the memories of some people would begin to fade after 5 years, far less approaching 14 years. Others of them are I don't want to say they're not serious, because any criminal matter is serious, but we have to make some strategic decisions. So we want to fast track all of the homicide cases, all of the manslaughter cases, all the serious crime, any crime with a firearm. All those cases are going to be given priority.
To this end, the Director of Public Prosecutions is currently examining all those cases to see which ones the Crown will abandon. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Thanks, Sharika. Government is working to restore full operations at the Supreme Court in White Park Road by January. However, Attorney General Dale Marshall says there's a possibility of a slight delay due to several challenges. Now, he says in addition to the environmental problems which are being addressed, the roof also has to be fixed.
It was budgeted for just under $1 million, but when once the construction companies that actually inspected the roof to tender, the tenders have come in at twice that. So instead of being able to say, well, these tenders are within budget and therefore we can make an informed decision as to which tender would be awarded, we've now had to go back to the drawing board to see exactly what's responsible for the differential between the estimate and the actual tenders and see how we can negotiate.
Noting government is incurring significant costs for every month it continues to rent the temporary location in Manor Lodge, Mr. Marshall says there's also an issue with the building's cooling system.
The building has three air condition components on the roof, 2 of which were functioning, and therefore we felt we'd be in a position to reopen the court and await the arrival of the third. Now, these are not things that are built in Barbados, but since we closed the court, one of those other units has also stopped working. So we have to make sure that we get that right, because the problem with the mold was largely because of the air quality.
Amid suggestions in some circles that cannabis can be decriminalized, the local Rastafari community is calling for its legalization. That's according to representative for the Ichiruga Naim Council for the Advancement of Rastafari, Peter Adonijah Aline. He was speaking at a discussion on cannabis hosted by the University of the West Indies as part of its 70th anniversary activities. Mr. Aline says it makes no sense people going to jail every day for the same plant that's believed to have so many health benefits.
Rastafari are calling for a moratorium on arrests for cannabis, for an expunging of the records of those who have a record of cannabis offenses, and for the release from incarceration of those who have been incarcerated for cannabis.
Mr. Aline says only through legalization will people be allowed to properly research and explore all the potential uses of the plant. If cannabis were to be decriminalized, changes would have to be made to Barbados' legal and regulatory framework. Director of Strategy at CIBC First Caribbean International Bank, David Small, says under the existing framework, local banks would be extremely reluctant to open and operate accounts for marijuana-related businesses. He says this is mainly because they stand to lose their correspondent banking relationships, which could pose a serious threat to the economy. U.S. banks in particular have been increasingly vigilant after being slapped with billion-dollar fines due to money laundering.
It was related to Latin American drug money flowing through the U.S. financial system. And large U.S. banks closed accounts and ended relationships with banks in other countries to reduce the risk. Now, since marijuana is illegal at the U.S. federal level and correspondent banks operate under federal law, they fear further billion-dollar fines and are unlikely to really want to hold correspondent banking relationships with banks in other countries that generate or support the marijuana trade.
The Barbados Coast Guard is being advised to be guided by God. This message from senior pastor of the White Park Wesleyan Holiness Church, Reverend Esther Willoughby. Now, she was addressing a church service to observe the 11th anniversary of the commissioning of the Coast Guard's HMBS Pelican base on Spring Garden.
God to be our guide. Keep His principles. Read and live by His word. His word is a compass. And you sailors and so on will know what a compass is. The technology today is a godsend. But do not leave God out of the picture.
Acting Commanding Officer Lieutenant Commander Derek Brathwaite says the HMBS Pelican will remain a beacon of hope as it lives up to its mission of protecting Barbados waters against all threats.
As we say in the military, no change. Secondly, as we serve, we do so mindful of the next generation who will take the tone from our performance, our energies, our vigor. Let me reassure you that the lessons that we've learned over the years have not been lost on us, and as we reflect on the past, but look forward towards embracing the brighter future, we do so with hope and prayerful contemplation.